Hi, I'm Brian.
Okay, so it is house wrap day. Here's my roll of house wrap. So it is 9 feet tall, 150 feet long. That's enough to go around the building. The 9 feet is good and bad. I think often these things come in, maybe 4-foot rolls or something, kind of like sheathing wood or something. And you would do it kind of in pieces, in strips. You would start at the bottom and do kind of a shingle effect from the bottom to the top. What I thought was nice about this 9-foot roll is that in one shot it can cover my whole stretch there, and I have no seams that I have to tape or anything like that. So that is good, but it's also a little bad because I don't know if you can foresee what's about to happen here, but as I go along the front, these sheathing panels are 8 feet tall, and this wall is about 8 feet tall. So that'll be fine. I can run this whole thing across here in one shot, no problem. But as soon as I round that corner over there, I'm gonna have kind of the mirror image of this wall here. And what's gonna happen is at the top, it's gonna start to get shorter and shorter and shorter, but of course the ground is still down there. So this 9-foot tube isn't gonna fit between the top of the wall and the ground. So I think we're gonna do our best here to figure this out, but I think what I'm gonna do, I think the logic is gonna be, and especially on the back wall is gonna be tough because the back wall is only about 6.5 feet tall and the ground is kind of right there, right? So I think what we're gonna do is when we get to a wall like this, when we come around this corner, say, I'll roll out this whole stretch, line it up at the bottom and maybe tack it in place just at the bottom, maybe the bottom corner or whatever, but run it across, and obviously it's going to be sticking up higher than the roof at this point, right? And maybe make a slit kind of at the corner, cut down the roll, and let that top portion that's going to be cut off, let it just fall. So get the bottom where we want it, run it along the bottom, roll out the whole sheet so that I can cut it at the corner, let that top portion fall, and then round the next corner and do the same thing. Go over, cut it at the corner, let it fall, and then, so as long as I'm tacking it in at the bottom and then at a high point, on the wall, I think once I let that thing fall, I think I can just move on, and the top portion that flops down, I can just worry about where it gets cut off after the fact. But by cutting that slit at the corner and letting the top part fall, I think I can work this wall without worrying about the tube being taller than the wall. Basically, I have to get the tube past the end of the wall so that I can just get it out of the way so that I don't have that restriction there. So that's going to be the goal. Much like the roofing paper, this actually gets installed with a cap-headed nail, a nail with basically a plastic washer on it just for more surface area so that it doesn't pull through. It is not, I'm not sure about this one. A lot of these are fine to be installed with staples, and this one might be too, but I had a bunch of the cap nails, so I'm going to use them. There's the little box of them right there. So I should have got one of these out, but they look like that. All right, so it's just a thin nail. It's ridged, and it's got this cap on it so that it's got a little more surface area so that the paper can't just rip right off of the nail head. But although I am going to be installing it with those, I am going to use, again, much like the roofing paper, I'm going to use this stapler, which I borrowed from my neighbor Bill from the Upside Downsizing, to just tack it in place just for convenience, because it'll take less hands. As we're kind of getting it where we want it to be, I can just kind of tack it in a couple of places just to save us the trouble of trying to hold it in 5 different places. And if the wind should happen to blow at all, which hopefully it won't, that's just a way to keep it from getting all out of control on us. So I will be using the stapler a little bit, but that is not really my installation method. It is the cap nails. But and then of course we just have to cut out the doors and the windows as we go. So let's see how we do. We're still going? We're still going, I guess. So, obviously not super pretty yet, but we're basically using the staples as a set of hands just to hold that stuff up onto the wall. It might not be in the exact position it needs to be in. I'm gonna start the nailing now, but if we have to, we can pull the staples out and make an adjustment before we nail. And I think that's gonna do. The hard part was getting that 9-foot tube kind of out of our way and being able to work with the paper. So basically what we did was just got way ahead of ourselves with the tube, just held this thing roughly in position so that we can now come back and hopefully work with it. So. Okay, so let's try and put one of these windows in. I haven't done this before, so let's see how it goes. Did a little research, and like everything else, you know, there's at least a dozen different ways to do this, and everybody's got their reasons for why their way is the best. So I chose one, and here we go. So we've got our house wrap on here. What I've done is I've cut the house wrap back a couple of inches from all the edges, from the bottom and sides, and straight across the top, level with the opening. And I've cut back diagonally from the corners to create basically flaps on all the sides. So, including the top. So the idea here is to create kind of a shingling effect of material so that anytime if water should happen to get behind something high, it'll end up getting in front of the thing that's below it. So we always overlap from top to bottom. Or, I don't know how best to say that, but the things that are lower are covered by the things that are higher. So you actually start from the bottom and work up so that anything above it covers over something below it. So we're going to start at the bottom. So we're going to use some flashing tape, and the first thing we're going to do is flash the bottom, and we're going to catch this paper here We're going to put a piece across, just level with the sill. On this bottom piece, we're going to tuck the tape in behind these flaps on the side, again, so that the stuff coming down will overlap something below. So that's our first couple pieces of tape is flat, and then sticking up above the sill a little bit, we'll cut it and fold it over. So that'll create, and then a couple of small pieces on the sides to wrap around. That'll be our sill plate. So that happens first. Then we set the window in place. We'll do some checks for level and things. We'll put some shims in here, check the gaps around it. When we know it fits well, that'll be a dry fit. When we know it fits well, we'll take it back out. We'll seal the outer edge of it before we put it up. We'll put it up in, we'll check it again. We'll tack it in place. And once we're happy with it, we'll nail it all in. I should mention it has a nailing flange. So we'll now nail that flange all around, and then we'll start with the rest of the taping. So then it would go sides. We'll take the side flaps. They'll cover the bottom piece. We'll run tape down the side. That tape will hit the house wrap. It'll hit the sheathing, and it'll hit the nailing flange on the window. This is what's called I believe they call it a fully adhered system, is what they call it. So because it hit, and I think that's because the tape hits the house wrap, the sheathing, and the flange of the window. So we'll do that on the sides, then we'll go up to the top, and on the top, instead of kind of pinning the paper behind, again, the idea of having everything from the top overlap everything below it. This tape will actually stay out of the way. We'll tape on the sheathing and the window flange at the top. Then we'll bring this paper down. The idea being if anything gets behind the paper, it has something else to hit before getting inside the house. So that's kind of the order of things here. So let's start with the tape at the bottom. That is what's called a sill pan, made with flashing tape. So the bottom piece of house wrap is covered. The sides are still free. Now we're going to dry fit the window, get it where we want it, take it back out, put some sealant around the edge, put it back in, make sure it's good, and then we'll tape over. We'll tape the sides onto it, with the top peeled back, and then bring the top down. We'll actually use the house wrap tape to finish up that top flap. Okay, so let's get some shims on here and dry fit the window. The idea with the shims is just to create a little air gap at the bottom. You don't really want the window sitting right on the sill, because that could trap water and moisture there. So you want a little bit of breathability, and you want the gap around to be roughly uniform. For the sealant, so I've got this placed the way I had it in there. So this is the bottom, this is the back side I'm looking at, or the inside I should say. So I'm going to seal around the sides and the top. I'm actually going to seal a little bit across the bottom, but I'm going to leave some gaps just in case water finds its way down there. There'll be a place for it to escape. If I sealed the whole thing, the water wouldn't be able to get out. Go inside and check level and plumb again. Okay, so we're level and plumb. We've got sealant on there. Now we can nail it in place. We're just using roofing nails. They've got a big kind of flat head on them to go through that nailing flange. little tight quarters nailing on that flange. I don't know if all windows are like this, but there's barely room to hit that nail without hitting the edge of the window. So now just to finish the taping. So like I said, what do we got here? So we've got house wrap, we've got sheathing, and we've got nailing flange on the window. We're gonna catch all of those with our flashing tape. So fully adhered. So we're gonna do that down the side. We're gonna run over the paper. We're gonna run over the flashing that was down below. Again, overlapping top to bottom. So we'll do that down both sides. And then across the top, we'll go over top of that, but under the top paper. So while I'm doing this, I'll mention a mistake I made so you can avoid it. When you're doing the house wrap and you're putting in these nails, these cap nails, don't go closer than 6 inches or so around the window, because then you won't be able to peel those flaps back. I had to actually pull a couple of my nails, so you might see a hole or two in the paper here, but it's going to get covered over with tape. But leave about a 6 or 8 inch gap around the window where you don't put any nails, so that when you cut those flaps, you can fold them back freely. Okay, now for this top flap, I'm just going to use the house wrap tape to tape this top flap down, and any of the cuts, any of the exposed cuts to the paper that I made to do my flaps. So I'll just cover those with the house wrap tape, and that'll do it. And there we are. Should have a pretty good waterproof window.